Hello everybody and welcome back to LMM. And if you're enjoying what you're seeing on the channel at the moment, how about giving this video a like and maybe subscribing to the channel to help us grow, and perhaps even check out our Patreon. By now, most of you will know that I really love model railways. I've got a vast collection of different engines on different gauges and I've really enjoyed taking our modular layout out to shows throughout the year. However, one of the big issues that I hear people talking about is the cost of model railway stuff and how expensive it is to get into the hobby. So expensive that in fact some people say that it stops them from getting involved at all. And whilst yes, there are plenty of very expensive and lovely models out there, you don't have to spend a huge amount of money to actually get started in the hobby. Recently, I was browsing on a well-known auction website and I came across this for £10, including the postage. This is the R167 set, or at least it's part of it. Whilst it didn't come with any track, it does have these nice instruction manuals which are nice and period from the time. This set was only available between 1975 and 1976. The loco, Northstand wagon, Shell tanker are correct. However, this should be a Heinz wagon rather than a Kellogg's. Same shape but just different branding. The big question of course though is, what is this? So let's have a look at it. This is the Hornby Continental Tank Engine R254, based on something Continental. It replaced the previous Continental tank engine that had been around since the early 70s. The big difference between this version and the version that came before it was this one has a red chassis, which makes it look slightly Germanic. It wasn't particularly well liked at the factory or well received, as the public wanted a British engine for their British railway modelling. However, during that period, they sold 6,900 of these individually and more than 74,000 of them in sets like the one I've got. It was eventually retired and replaced with the much-loved Holden tank. So the big question is, have I got myself a runner or is this a lemon? And to find the answer to that, it's time to break up my nice shiny rolling road. We're going to need two rollers, so we'll move those clear. And then we'll place the engine on top of the rollers. So let's see what happens if we apply some power. Well my. Now I had one of these back in the day, and it was about the third locomotive I ever got, although mine was all black, so probably the earlier version. These are renowned for being rubbish runners. As you can see, it bounces all over the place. They are cheap and nasty. However, I've got to be honest with you, I wasn't expecting this to run at all, and this is actually going quite well. Right, let's see what we can do for a crawl. What can we get you down to? Okay, well that's phenomenal from something from the 70s straight up the box. Has this actually ever been run? Yeah, those wheels are dirty. In fact, they could probably do with a clean. Oh yeah, much better. You can also see square axles in round holes. So we're not going to give this a full service, but we are going to give it a drop of locomotion engine oil, which is specially designed for these kind of things. Right, let's see if that's made a difference to its running characteristics. Right, it's basically instantly quieter. And whilst we leave that to run in and see if the oil's done it any good, let's have a look at what else we had on the set. There's this Northstand wagon from Grimsby, so limited for fish stocks. The detail is, well, it's there, there's plenty of brake rigging, it's a bit coarse, but this is a good start wagon on decent metal wheels. It's a bit of detail inside. I think I've got one or two of these already, so it's a perfectly standard wagon. With a bit of weathering, this would look quite good in a normal train. Yeah, big train, don't look at the detail too much. There's also the basic shell tanker, which is fairly basic. I think I've got 3 or 4 of these now. Again, there's a little bit of detail on the side. It looks bright neon yellow, so it needs weathering down a bit. I think on a more detailed version, there's meant to be a ladder there so you can get onto the walkway on top, because it's not there. I don't know if this is just a basic version that doesn't have it. One of mine has got this, all the rest are devoid of it. But, you know, I can have a train of shell tankers, I guess. And finally, we have the Kellogg's wagon, which may or may not have been part of this set. Now, personally, I don't like this because I don't believe Kellogg's ever used anything like this. The Shell wagon and the Northstand wagon I can kind of believe. This one is just a bit marketing gimmicky. However, complete set. What we have here is a set of cheap, ready-to-go starter set items. And for the money I paid, I'm very happy. I don't understand why they made a Continental engine for the UK market. Surely, with more and more ready-to-run engines being available from Hornby at the time, why would you have gone for this with nothing else in the range? Sure, you could sell it to the Continental market, but then there's nothing to back it up. And it is proper cheap and nasty. It's all moulded detail. You can see the contact touching the side of the motor quite clearly on the side of the frames. and it doesn't half shake or rattle and roll as it's going along. One of the other things that shows how cheap and nasty this thing is you can hear a little click going on. And if I slow it down, you'll see that it's actually the coupling rod is just sticking a little bit. And so it hits the top and then it moves. Isn't that glorious? That's after I've oiled it. The observator bunks you will have already noticed, but there's a complete lack of buffers here and here. Perhaps it's modelled on some kind of narrow gauge engine where you just had a front knuckler here, which this kind of takes the place of. But it's definitely cheap and nasty. I do like the fact we have the air pump for air brakes modelled here, and over there's what looks like a bell, although I imagine that's actually just a rather large hooter, because I don't know why this would have a bell. I don't know if you can quite appreciate just how much this thing is gyrating around as it goes on the rolling road. It's quite impressive. Now, I am very aware that a locomotive and 3 wagons does not a model railway make. However, it's a really good starting place. An oval of track is readily and cheaply available. The biggest expense now will be getting yourself a transformer. But let's go and put this stuff through its paces.
I retrieved myself an oval of track from my stores and decided to set it up outside as it was a glorious day, and then put our mighty locomotive on the railway and gave it some power to see whether or not it would be able to complete a circuit without throwing itself off the line. Based on how much the little engine had bucked and kicked when it was on the rolling road, I was genuinely a little bit surprised that it had successfully made a loop around the track. But with that triumph behind us, the logical next stage was to assemble the wagons from the set and set this out around the railway in the way that it was intended when it was brand new, and that genuinely was a little bit exciting.
A set like this is a pure 70s joy. The little locomotive that doesn't really look like anything, the bright colours. This is very much designed to be a starter set to attract the attention of a young person and go, "Oh, look at that." There's no real prototype to this. I'm fairly sure that this particular train of wagons would never run together, particularly not with this locomotive. But it's got a real charm to it. It just screams the mid-70s. Just lovely little train set, and what a good way to get into the hobby. Now, the problem, of course, with this, as I mentioned, was if you had this, there wasn't really any way you could expand it because that engine doesn't fit in with anything else. It's so clearly not British, and I guess vaguely maybe German, but maybe I'm just getting caught up with the fact it's got the red frames. That engine, once you've had it and you've done the starter set and you've done this, would be parked away in a box somewhere and never really seen again. On the other hand, this goes a long way to showing you what you can achieve with very little money. £10 for that locomotive and the train. The track cost me pennies, and okay, the most expensive thing was a transformer. And I know this is a very long way away from being a fully fledged model railway. This is a very different thing. This is an oval of track in the garden, but it still gives an awful amount of joy. And I guess this is exactly what model railways kind of are meant to do. They're meant to give joy, and this is it at its most basic and most distilled. Locomotives, some wagons going round just making me happy. And however you look at it, there is something kind of magical about a starter set. All of that possibility, all of that potential, all just there with a loco and 3 wagons. It's just simple joy and brilliant. And I really like this thing, despite the fact that it's, well, weird and vaguely ugly and horrendously built. It's just doing exactly what it was meant to do. About 50 years later, trundling around quite happily, making someone happy. I think it's great. But it shows, though, if you want to look around and you want to get into the hobby and you're prepared to buy second-hand and take a chance on something, there are plenty of things you can buy to get a start in this hobby without breaking the bank. All of this has cost me, well, with the transformer, £40, because that was a second-hand buy as well. It doesn't have to be expensive, and it's a super hobby to get in and gives so much joy. Once you've done this initial expense, yes, you want to expand, you want to buy more track and points more engines, but this will continue to give joy just like this for basically generations. And most of this will scale. I mean, I now want to take this and put this onto our modular layout because I think that would be great fun, just to see this little train trundling around on the modular. And maybe somebody will say, as it goes past, "Oh, I had one of those." But yeah, for £10, I think I've done rather well, really. Working train set, plenty of joy, and I'm just going to sit here and enjoy watching this trundle round. I gotta be honest, I really like the glass tabletop on the table because you've got this kind of reflection going on that makes it all look very arty and fun. But there we go. You can make a start in the hobby for not much money, and who would have thought a £10 train set actually works and is fine. Now, I might do a little bit of modifications to that. I can hear the motor's got a slight grumble on it, so it might need a little bit more of a service. But considering the buyer I bought it from said, untested, don't know if it works, well, pretty pleased. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed exploring the world of cheap train sets with me. And if you have, how about clicking on it somewhere over there for another one of our Model Railway videos, or down there for some of the adventures with the modular at the other end of the scale. Not that? Well, frankly, I'm just going to play with the train set. So thank you all very much for watching, and we'll see you next time. And let me know what you think of this thing in the comments below. Ta-ra!